Hello and welcome to the Financial Puzzle Playbook with your host, Jim Sumpter. I'm RJ Malik, producer of the podcast. So we are continuing the discussion about the 6 puzzle pieces, right, Jim?
That's right. This is RJ. This is going to be an interesting episode because, a lot of times we'll talk about 1 or 2 pieces. Today, we're really going to touch on all 6.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
In the context of financial literacy. And so for the first time during this show, I actually have a repeat guest.
Nice.
This is Victoria O'Toole, who we met back in episode 13, I believe it was.
Yes.
And when she and I originally talked, we said, well, we could probably talk about a variety of topics. And so we will jump back in with different things. So Victoria, welcome.
Thank you.
Again, and just to remind everyone, so Victoria is a junior at the University of Alabama.
Correct.
I have mentored her over the last, year and a half now?
Yeah.
About a year and a half. And she says that I've taught her some things. She's also
You've
taught me
a
some things.
lot, Jim. I'm very thankful for you.
Well, I appreciate that. And she's also taught me some things along the way. She's a little better on technology maybe than I am, so she's taught me a handful of things. But Victoria, we're super happy to have you.
Thank you.
This is a topic today that, I'll be quite frank, is very near and dear to my heart. I know it is to you as well.
Absolutely.
And it is something that is extremely important in our country.
So important.
That I feel like is lacking. And I think you would probably agree with that.
100%.
And so we're going to kind of, as we jump into this, take it, a couple of different angles. Real briefly, just remind everyone kind of your background. How did you get to Alabama?
Yeah.
I know you've lived in a variety of states.
I have.
And so let's just real briefly talk about that.
Yes, I'm a military kid. I grew up in Nebraska.
Okay.
If you were to take a look at the high school I started in from a Google map view, it'd be surrounded by corn and bean fields for miles.
Okay.
So that is where I'm from. I was born and mainly raised in Nebraska, but I graduated high school in Virginia. I knew and set a goal from a really early age that I wanted to put myself through college financially independent of my parents. So that was top of mind when I started working from a really early age and applying for scholarships and looking at colleges. So I ended up getting a full ride to the University of Alabama. Took that because it was my best financial decision and a great alumni network. You're an Alabama grad.
I am.
So
Yes.
A lot of incredible networking opportunities that got me internships at JP Morgan and a financial advising internship my freshman year. So I have been very passionate about financial literacy from a really young age and knew that this was a career path I wanted to go down for several years.
Okay. Awesome. That's fabulous. So let me ask you this. What does financial literacy mean to you?
For me, financial literacy means having an awareness of personal finances, how to balance a checkbook, a budget, how you get out of debt, the different areas you can have your money, understanding how your money goes in and out and that cash flow that you talk about, and understanding those different financial puzzle pieces that you stress so much in this podcast and you share about. So that would be financial literacy to me, is having an overall good understanding of the money that's coming in and the money that's going out and how your money is able to benefit you and not have that money hinder you in any way or
Right.
your financial decision making.
That's interesting because we talk, I know when I was in high school, back in the last century.
Oh, come on. You make it sound so long ago.
No, it really was back in the last century. So when I was in high school, we had a class where they taught us how to balance a checkbook.
That's good.
Okay?
That's important.
So my first job out of college, as I've shared, I was working at the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was an assistant branch manager. So sometimes I would be at the desk.
Fancy.
Fancy, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and as I've shared, my goal was to play a lot of golf and be rich and have banker's hours, and I
Yes.
did none of
No.
that. So, yes, but what I did do a lot of was help people as they came in and said, can you help me balance my checkbook?
Yeah.
Can you help me? Here's my list of transactions. I need to know, how much money I have.
Yeah.
A lot of times, if I ask someone your generation today, and I'm not picking on the generation,
No,
it's
but
just
it's
it's just very true. If I asked you how much money's in your checking account, what the response I might get a lot of times is, I don't know, let me look, and they're on their phone,
Yeah, checking their bank
checking
account.
their balance, and they say, well, that's how much money's in my bank account.
Yeah.
And while that may be true, that has cleared the bank,
Yeah.
there may be things outstanding that haven't cleared. So that's
Absolutely.
one aspect. So I think that's part of, a lot of times when we think of financial literacy, that's part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The second part of it, I think, is, and I've talked about when you get your first big boy job, your
Yeah.
first big girl job, and you go in and they say, okay,
God.
here's all this paperwork you need to fill out, and there's a W-4, which says how much is your tax going to be taken out. Or there's in Alabama, we have what's called an A-4, which is how much state tax is going to be taken out. Then they do things like, okay, here's your benefit package. And so inevitably what happens is the student will call their mom or their dad, or sometimes I'll get the phone call, and it was like, hey, can you help me with these things? And then a lot of times it's like, okay, so they're going to give you X number of dollars in life insurance. Well, why do I need that?
Yeah.
What does disability
Yeah.
insurance
What
mean?
is FICA?
What is FICA? Or in my case, FICA. We've all heard that story. And what does medical insurance cost me? Or what is a deductible? Or what is co-insurance? So there's all these things. So part of the whole reason that I even do this podcast and this show
Yeah, is for financial
is
literacy.
for financial literacy. So when I said in the beginning, we're going to touch on all 6 puzzle pieces, we literally are.
Yeah.
Because you could have financial literacy in all 6 of the pieces.
Absolutely. Even if it's at a very basic understanding, that is
Right.
so important, because you're so much further ahead than almost everyone else around you if you understand very basic ideas of those puzzle pieces.
Right. So let me ask you, so when you were in high school, back this century, not last century, when you were in high school, did y'all have anything in your high school that touched on financial literacy? And I have a reason that I'm asking that question.
We did, and I am so thankful.
Okay.
Sophomore year, still keep in touch with this professor. He is
Okay.
incredible.
Okay.
Also a very big sponsor and mentor for me. He taught a econ/personal finance class, kind of merged, but we did file like a little mock tax return, and we learned how to fill out a checkbook and how to balance a checkbook and very basic budgeting. And that was a year-long course, and that is required in the state of Virginia.
It is, okay.
And it's also required in Alabama now, correct?
Well, so that's where I was going to head
Okay.
with this. So what happened, I believe it was last year, in the previous administration, the previous Congress, the Congress has passed, and this is actually not set in law yet, but it's the beginning.
progress.
It's in the progress, and it's the beginning stages, where we're going to have national financial literacy
So important.
goals. And I believe there's 26 states
Yes,
you and I were
26
talking.
currently that have financial literacy education required to graduate high school.
Right, and Alabama is one of those. I know the governor has been talking about what those requirements are going to look like. I believe the Congress in the state has said, yes, we will have those requirements. Now it's a matter of what are they going to look
Yes.
like. And one of the organizations that you and I are both a part
Yes,
of,
FPA.
me at the advisor level and you at the student level, which is FPA, so that's Financial Planning Association.
Yes.
It's a national organization. And that organization is very, very, very invested in working with the states, working with the legislatures, the legislators. We will have representation going to Washington
Yes.
to talk about what pieces of these puzzles are needed, because I believe that it is so
It's
important.
crucial.
Right.
It
right.
truly is, because if you don't get that financial literacy at home, then you're going to go down those same financial downfalls that your parents did, and it's just generational with everything. If you're not getting it at home and you're not getting it at school, you're just going to go down very bad financial habits, and that's going to last the entirety of your life.
Right. So I was reading a couple of things yesterday. There was, this has been talked about. There's an organization, the Financial Literacy and Education Commission, was established under the Fair and Accurate Credit Act of 2003.
Wow. Okay, that was
Okay.
before I was born.
That was before. Oh, wow. Okay, so that was before you were born in the
Yeah.
year that I became a CFP,
Oh
so
my
a
gosh, that's
certified
so
financial
cool.
planner. So I've been a financial planner as long as you've been here. That's great. So
I probably shouldn't have pointed that out. Sorry, Jim.
well, but that's okay because I will tell you it has evolved over time.
A lot,
I have
yeah.
learned over time, and one of the goals, and I'll make sure that this study gets put
Yes.
into the study notes for this episode. But the commission was tasked to develop a national financial education website so that people can have a national strategy on financial education.
That's
Okay.
great.
So this was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Is there a site?
There is a site.
Okay.
I
Is
don't know how
good?
active it is, and that's my point. A lot of things that happen in government, unfortunately,
Takes
there's
forever.
a big, great, grandiose idea, and sometimes they don't come to fruition, and sometimes they do. This is a topic that I believe you and I are both very passionate
Yes.
about. I think there's a lot of passion becoming around people across the country.
Yeah.
And I am super excited to see steps being taken.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about what you've done at the University of Alabama.
Sure.
With the FPA chapter, because you're chapter president.
I am.
Okay. So let's talk about that and some of the things that you've done.
There have been a few things. We actually just started up a financial literacy book club.
Okay.
And we started that this semester. We're reading 3 books. So we're meeting in March to discuss the psychology of money. We're also going to be discussing Your Money or Your Life and then Die with Zero. So those are the 3 books that are on the roster for this semester. And we already have over 10 people involved, which is great because that was about the size of the club. Last year, it was about 20 members. So it's really great to see the involvement. We have a lot of diversity with the club, and I really wanted to create that so we could create smaller communities for people to engage and talk about finances and the psychology of money and important, healthy financial habits. So it's been great so far. We've had 1 meeting, and we'll have another one discussing that in early March.
So when you had a meeting, what you're saying is there's a group of students that came together,
Yeah.
about 10 of you. I'm sure there was food involved because
There was. We had
yeah.
some dessert.
Well, because any student meeting has to have food involved.
Absolutely.
Okay, so they come to this meeting. What kind of things did you talk about? Are you? And let me ask a second dovetail question on that. Is financial literacy? It's not something that you sit around and talk about on a Saturday night.
Yeah, not really.
No, okay.
Not really.
But is it common throughout a school or a university that this isn't really well known, or this is needed, or talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's definitely needed. A lot of students, they come into college and they just decided they wanted to go to the University of Alabama or any other college, and they either had the help of their parents or they didn't. And for those who didn't, they had to take out student loans, and they just had to sign their name on a dotted line, and they had no financial literacy around how they're going to repay that debt or the terms around it. So that's a big conversation topic that's discussed a lot, is student loans.
Okay.
There's a lot of misconceptions around the repayment of student loans and the certain specifications, whether it's a private loan or if it's a public loan through the government, the different stipulations that go with both of those. So I hear that a lot. It's shocking to me that there is no sort of financial literacy hub at the university. So I actually had the opportunity to give a talk to a whole bunch of students about credit and how credit works and how you build it, how you destroy it, how the different types of credit. I talked about that. So that was a super fun workshop I did, and something I'd like to really expand our presence on campus through workshops like that. But the book club, and that was a start to how we'd like to talk more about personal finance at the University of Alabama.
That's interesting. So let's talk about the credit thing. How did you learn about it? How did you find out about it? How did you learn enough to be able to go and present on that?
So I would say that credit stemmed from discussions with my father about family finances and credit cards. So
Okay.
I learned a little bit from him, but that personal finance class that I took in high school
Okay.
taught me a lot. And I've actually had the opportunity to give that presentation twice at my high school. So my old teacher, who I'm still in touch with very constantly, he asked me to be a guest speaker, and I've done that the past 2 years.
That's
so
awesome.
he helped me with that. We built the presentation together to make sure I was giving all the information that he wanted me to give. And I gave that same presentation on campus. So we worked together to build that, and it was really fun.
How was it received on campus?
On campus, there were some things that I went very basic level at first, and I tried to expand upon it. I think the biggest misconception that I hear from students is like they think it's free money, or that they don't have to pay back the limit that they have on their card. And for me, that seems shocking. Like, you're not just going to get free money, but a lot of students think that it's just free money and that they don't have to pay it back. Or I also hear that a lot of people pay the minimums, and that's okay, and that they don't think that they're paying any extra interest.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case.
That's not the case. And I know that, like, on a credit card statement now, it'll say, you owe
So
X.
many other options.
Yeah, and if you only pay the minimum, it'll take you 18 years and 4 months, or whatever.
Oh my gosh,
whatever the number
it's
is.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so those two things would probably, so students not understanding that credit is free money, because it's not. You have
Right.
to repay it.
Right.
And then also you need to pay off your statement balance.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you pay the minimum, you're going to have to pay probably 20 to 30% interest if you pay the minimum. So those
Right.
are the two main areas I see students having some confusion around with credit.
Right. So was your focus in these various classes, and even in the book club that you guys are doing, I guess not so much with the psychology of money, because that's more of the psychology
Yeah,
side of it, rather than the details and the independent parts of it. But are you finding that there's more questions around the credit and the cash flow? I always talk about the first puzzle piece of any financial puzzle is cash flow.
Yes.
And I've probably said that 100 times, that it absolutely is the cornerstone, and you have
Yes,
to know
of a
that
financial
first.
plan. Yeah.
But there's a lot of other aspects, and one of the things that I see with, so someone will graduate from college, they'll come into my office, so we offer on our website a 20-minute Ask Anything session. And it literally is that. I mean,
Yeah.
you can go onto my link on my calendar, and you can book time with me for 20 minutes. Open book.
Yeah.
Ask anything. Ask anything financial related. It doesn't matter. And so one of the things that I offer for, a grandchild or a child or a friend of a friend even, is go on there, book some time, and just, ask away.
And that's an incredible resource for
Yeah.
people who are listening on the podcast
Yeah.
to utilize. Maybe not in tax season. Maybe
Yeah,
we wait
yeah.
until
Yeah,
April.
let's maybe wait
after
till
April.
after April. Yeah, exactly.
But Jim is an incredible resource, and a lot of things are Googleable as well.
Right,
And
right.
even if you're not taught financial literacy, sometimes you do need to take that initiative and enroll in free online courses.
Mm-hmm.
I know we were at an FPA meeting a few hours ago, and they talked about Wayne State College, and they have their own financial literacy course. Maybe that's a resource that our listeners, check out.
Yeah, and we will make sure that those sorts of things get kind of put in, and it's going to be interesting, because one of the things that we're trying to do at our firm is we're trying to bring about more awareness of topics that a lot of times we're not experts in unless we know how to do it. And so it's one of the things that's a real focus for us. What were you
And
gonna-
I know that you mentioned maybe doing like quick 2 to 3 minute videos
Right.
on topics and
Right.
vocabulary, because we've talked a lot about clients coming in, and they just, again, they're like maybe your age or a little younger or a little older, and they were never taught financial literacy. So having these videos up to teach them very basics can be a really great resource.
And we're building those out. Those will be on our YouTube channel, probably second quarter of this year. I would say we'll be done with that. But it's interesting, because when you think financial literacy, a lot of times we think credit, we think being able to balance a checkbook. It's much more than that.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's go back to the book club
Sure.
real quick. Okay, so the psychology of money. Okay, so there's 10 students. They're sitting in a room. You're having dessert because food's involved. What are some of the questions that are coming up, or what's on people's minds?
So We've only had our first meeting,
Okay.
and that's when we handed out books.
Okay.
So maybe we'll have to do a follow-up on that because we're going to have our first meeting where we discuss the book in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I'll keep you updated
Keep
on
me
that.
updated on that.
But I anticipate we're going to have a lot of great conversation around how the way that we think about money influences the choices that we make around money.
Well, and I had Brendan, who I know you know Brendan as
Brendan's
well.
incredible.
So Brendan was on a few episodes ago, and we did a couple of those, and we talked about the psychology of money.
It's so important.
It's extremely important in today's world. What is the goal of the book club? Is it to sit around and talk about just various topics, to try to get really, really into the weeds on something, or more general? What's sort of your vision on the way that works?
There were a few different motivators for creating it. One was to create just smaller communities within UAFPA. So I wanted to create opportunities for students to engage with each other on a small level. So we started tonight. We actually have a screening of The Big Short.
Oh,
so
okay.
that's
Okay.
going to be, I know it's not like super financial planning, but it's a fun little social activity and the students can meet each other and engage. And the book club is also another great way for the other students to get to know each other, to really discuss finance and financial planning and financial literacy. Because you sit in a classroom, we're all mainly finance students. We sit in a classroom and we get lectured at. We don't ever get asked our own opinions. We don't get the opportunity to share in class, which is one of the biggest disadvantages I find with the typical structure of our classroom. So I wanted to create an environment where we could engage and talk and learn different perspectives and see where we're thinking. So building the communities, discussing financial literacy, thinking about other ways to grow this club, and also promote financial literacy within the community at the University of Alabama.
Hi everyone, I'm Cassidy, the second C in CMC Financial. So Dad sometimes gets on a roll with this podcast and might forget to remind you about a few things. 1, don't forget to like and share this podcast and leave a review. 2, follow CMC Financial on all of the socials, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And 3, go check out the website at cmcfp.com. Okay, back to my dad. He's probably still talking.
So we've talked about the book club. We've talked about growing financial literacy. We've talked a little bit about what is financial literacy. Let's talk about things that you have learned, because you started investing and saving and really focusing on a budget at a very young age.
Yes.
And we've, that's not normal.
10, yeah.
I say not normal. It's not the norm, let me say. What have you learned personally over the course of, let's say the last 5 or 6 years, but more specifically since you've been in college? I know that you go to a lot of events. You're very involved in FPA. But you do go to class where you talked about you're in this classroom setting where there's a lecture and you're reading context and you're reading concept, and you hope that you can put some of that into real world, but how does a lot of this actually get into real world, and how do you really actually learn what some of this is?
Yeah, so a lot of what I learn in my classes is maybe not all stuff that I would use as a financial planner in the future.
Okay.
I learned how to build a DCF analysis through my Excel modeling class that I'm taking this semester, and that's really great. I'm learning about Excel. I'm going to have to use Excel as a financial planner. So
Right.
that's been super useful. I don't know if I'll ever have to build a DCF analysis as a financial planner.
Probably not. Yeah, and for those who don't know what that is,
You don't probably need to.
You can Google it if you want to know, but that's for another day. It's interesting because that is a lot of what we get in the classroom environment. What we're talking about with financial literacy is sometimes more real world.
Yes, and sometimes you just don't get the opportunity to learn all of that in college, or that's just not how the system is built, unfortunately.
Right, and it's not just about what's in a textbook. It's so really what you're trying to do with the book club, with the organization of the group, because is this mostly business students?
Yes, it's all business students.
It's all business
Yes.
students. Okay. And so you're trying to prepare for the real world.
Yes.
Is that
and
is
have
that fair?
real world discussions, real world financial planning topics. And yeah, we're not getting that in the classroom. And I was so craving to read a lot of these books, and I wanted other students to discuss them with.
Right. So let me ask you this. What are the top 3 things that are financial topics that you know a little bit about, but that you want to learn more about?
I'd love to learn more about rebalancing portfolios.
Okay.
That's something I would love to learn a little bit more about. Tax.
Okay.
I'm not a big fan of tax, but I know how important it is to a financial plan and how evolving it is. And that's an area where you're super strong in. I took a tax class last semester, and it was challenging, but it was also pretty cool because if you navigate your taxes well, then you can definitely use them to benefit your financial plan. So taxes would be another area.
So tax strategy.
Yes,
Really
tax
more
strategy.
Tax strategy.
Yes,
Yeah.
tax strategy is very important. And a third?
So we've got rebalancing a
Yes.
portfolio, tax strategy. Okay, before we jump to the third, let's talk
Okay.
about why.
Okay.
Why is that? Why do you think that's important?
I haven't been taught how to rebalance a portfolio
Okay.
yet, and I know that's
Okay.
that's important as a financial planner to keep. Like if your client has certain risk tolerances, then you need to make sure that you're staying within those boundaries. So if a stock goes up a ton and now their portfolio is really concentrated in one specific area, maybe we need to make sure that we're investing in other places so that rebalances. I've never been taught that before. I've also never really sought out how to do that yet. That's something I will learn in the next few years.
So here's the reason that I asked you that question, because we talked about, I got my CFP when you were born. Okay?
Yes.
I would argue that experience
So
is
much
probably
more.
the best teacher.
Absolutely.
And what you guys are doing with the book club, with the FPA chapter, with just having conversation,
Yeah.
I think that is so important
Yes.
because we can't always learn things from a textbook.
No, you have to go beyond the book.
Right. We can't always learn things from Google, but we can always learn. And that's what's really, I think, good about the way that you've approached this. I'm assuming other students are excited about it.
They are, and
Yeah.
I've even had some questions. Hey, I want to bring my friend in. They're not in the club, but we'd love to have them. And I'm like, oh, well, the club's paying for it. So
Yeah.
maybe we find out some way to get some grant funding,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then we're able to bring in other people because we can't have the dues paid members paying for non-dues paid students to get books. But
Yeah.
maybe we could, get a grant through a company to pay for some of those books.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I bet we could figure that out.
Yeah,
So,
maybe.
something like that. All right, as we wrap this up, let me ask you this, because I know you love podcasts. I know you like blogs and books and just different resources to get things.
Yes.
What are 2 or 3 of your favorites?
Oh, well, I'm a big reader.
Okay.
Even though I'm busy, I maintain the importance of reading.
Okay.
So I recently, through December, I had some flights. I was traveling, and I finished the Millionaire Next Door.
Okay.
Have you ever read it before?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite books.
It was incredible. I feel like every single person in the world should read that book
Mm-hmm.
because it teaches you that the way that you may view a millionaire
Mm-hmm.
isn't exactly the way that they interact with their finances.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of statistics and facts in there, but also a lot of storytelling
Mm-hmm.
and real practical advice and knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
That is the #1 book I recommend people read. Also, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's another great one. That's a very, very, very well-known book, but it teaches you how the rich dad, interacts with money and how the poor dad interacts with money. And then Atomic Habits, if you're trying to build healthy financial habits, start with a book on how to build those habits. It's
That's
like-
one of Jennifer's favorite books, by the way, is Atomic Habits.
So,
Yeah.
fun fact to, kind of end off the podcast. I had a New Year's resolution 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it was to read 2 books a month. And I had never set a New Year's resolution. I just had no desire to. And maybe I just wasn't very goal-oriented. But I hadn't written down my goals and made steps to actually achieve those goals. But I knew I wanted to read 2 books a month. It was a very important goal for me. So I started my goal by reading Atomic Habits. Because why not read a book that's built on building habits and going through with them than that? So, and I actually went through and I read 2 books every month.
Did you
for
really?
that entire year? And I actually made good on my New Year's resolution.
There you go. Because what's interesting, Brendan talked about in the episode that we did with him about how I think it's like January the 15th or 16th
Like
is the day that
80% of people.
like 80% of the people fall off
Yeah.
of those New Year's resolutions. So good for you for finishing that up. So Victoria, I think it's all great advice. This is a topic that has been very near and dear to us, and as a financial planner, I would love to see people more educated on every financial topic within all 6 of what I call the big puzzle pieces. And then as we just continue to drill down, I hope that this podcast kind of helps with some of that literacy, because you're going to hear
some terms
a thing
coming
or
up.
two.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming in. The second time, I
Thank you,
promise you,
Jim.
we will have you back again at some point. I know you're going to be getting ready to graduate later on this year, and so but we're gonna have you back. So Victoria, thank you for coming in, taking the time, and talking about some of the great things that you're doing and the great things that I believe students in your generation, y'all get a bad rap a lot of times.
Yeah, we do.
And I think what you're doing is really incredible, and I appreciate all the efforts.
Well, thank you, Jim, for the
Yeah.
opportunity. It's always great engaging with you
Yeah.
and having these conversations.
Yeah. So RJ, I think that kind of wraps us up with this topic.
All right, but before you go, you need to give out your contact information.
Okay, so my direct number is 205-510-9074. Our website is cmcfp.com. That's also where you can go on our calendar link if you want to book that 20-minute Ask Anything session. And then we're on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Victoria, I know a lot of people can find you on LinkedIn.
Yes.
You are like the master of LinkedIn.
I love LinkedIn. I'm such an advocate. Please connect with me on LinkedIn at Victoria O'Toole, O''T''OOL.
Okay, perfect. And so RJ, there you go.
All right. Thank you, Jim and Victoria. And most importantly, thank you for listening to the Financial Puzzle Playbook podcast. We ask you to share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review, because this actually helps others find the show. Again, thank you for listening. And for everyone at the Financial Puzzle Playbook, I'm RJ Malik, and we'll see you at the next podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Puzzle Playbook. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Don't forget to follow us on social media by checking the links in the description. And contact us today by visiting our website at www.cmcfp.com or give us a call at 205-510-9074. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of CMC Financial. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, Private Client Services, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by CMC Financial or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Securities offered by registered representatives of Private Client Services, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor. Private Client Services, CMC Financial, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.